Hey everybody, my name is Lindsay Rains, and here today I'm going to be giving you a bonus video for the Equestrians Edge experience. So first we're going to talk about 3 different stretches that you can do every time before you ride to help stretch out your pelvic floor, your hamstrings, and your back and shoulder muscles. And then after that we're going to be showing you some different ways that you can help stretch out your horse before their ride. Finally, we'll be talking about breathing exercises that you can do before you start riding. So let's get started. The first stretch that we're going to do will help loosen up your pelvic floor. This is really important. Kristen actually taught me this. This is really important for horseback riders in particular because women can suffer from pelvic floor dysfunction if everything gets too tight down there. And we use all those muscles in order to help stabilize us in the saddle. So all you do is just kind of get into a wide stance, almost like you're going into a squat. And then you lean down, and keeping your back and your shoulders straight, just lean from one side, stretch out one leg, and then you can feel the burn and the stretch all the way through here. So just give it a few seconds on each side. And just make sure that when you're switching from side to side, you don't do anything too abruptly. So make sure you stand all the way up and then lean into the other side. And you're really going to feel this down here, and it's really going to help loosen up those muscles that you use a lot when you're stabilizing yourself in the saddle. So you can keep going back and forth like this for about 30 seconds, and it'll get things nice and loose down there. And so for the next stretch, we're actually going to stretch out our hamstrings. So to do this, we can actually sit down and stick one leg out like so, and then you're going to pull up your other leg and just rest it kind of above your knee on your thigh. And then make sure your toe is pointing kind of away just to get a better stretch. Keep your shoulders back and lean towards your other toe. And you're going to feel this all throughout your hamstring and through the back of your leg. And same thing, you can do 15 seconds each side, 30 seconds each side, or alternate 15 seconds every side until it starts to feel a little bit looser. As much as you can, keep your back straight, just like so. And for the last one, we're actually going to stretch out our back and our shoulder muscles. And this is really important just because we often do a lot to stabilize ourselves, keeping our posture good in the saddle. And so sometimes when we're constantly holding our shoulders up like that, those muscles can tend to get tight, and then when they get tight, they can pull us too far in one direction or the other. So this will really help you kind of keep yourself balanced and keep everything loose and keep it from aching. So you just start on all fours like so. And some of you guys might recognize this as the yoga pose. This is called thread the needle. So basically what you do is you take one of your hands and then you thread it through this open space here between your leg and your other arm. And then you can just do that for 15 seconds each side. And you should feel this in your shoulder and in your back from the side that, the arm that you're using. Hold it for a few seconds and do the other side. You'll feel that stretch really good. All right. So those are all of the stretches that you can do before you ride. Now I'm going to show you 3 different stretches that you can do for your horse. All 3 stretches will be using a treat, and you can just use pretty much any little horse treat or a slice of an apple to do this, whatever's the most motivating for your horse. But for this first stretch, we're just going to try to get their chin into their chest. And what this will do is it'll start stretching out their poll and their neck. Good boy. There you go, good boy. All right. And come here, Ethan. Good boy. Stretch. Good boy. Good boy. Good stretch. Yeah. All right. Stretch. Yeah. Good boy. For this next stretch, we're going to be trying to get their head down through their front legs, and this will start to stretch out their back. All right. Stretch. Good boy. And for this last stretch, we're going to try to loosen up their lateral muscles. And all we're going to try to do is just stretch their neck from one side to the other using the tree. Okay. Good boy. Good stretch. Yeah. All right. Stretch. Yeah. Good boy. Thank you so much for joining, and now we're going to move on to the next segment of the video. Hey guys, welcome back. I'm here with Rose, and as you can see, she's the sweetest little Arab saddlebred mare. And so we're just at the barn today, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about some things that you can do to prepare for your ride. We're talking a lot about fitness and being limber and strong in the saddle, and about fueling our bodies outside the saddle, but I also wanted to talk about what we can do to fuel our minds before we even get in the saddle, and other different things that we can do to make our ride go better. So Rose is going to help me demonstrate that today. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the attitude that we're going into our ride with. And by attitude, I'm really wanting to address fear. So I know that a lot of us know that having the most positive outlook can really help when it comes to horseback riding, but I think sometimes we forget to check in with ourselves before we get in the saddle. For example, when I first started learning to ride and compete, the biggest thing that I struggled with was being present with what I needed to do, because instead I was worrying about what could or would happen once I got in the saddle. Sometimes I was worried about my horse spooking, sometimes I was worried about what my trainer would be thinking of me, or if she'd approve of me. And then what if she didn't, and what if she had to correct me on something? And so I was just so tense when I got into the saddle that I had really set myself up to not necessarily fail, but not have the best ride possible either. And since horses are so intuitive, they really understand how we're feeling based on what they can feel in the saddle. And so what do we do with that? So what do we do when we're nervous, or when we're afraid that they're going to spook, or when we don't know how something in the ride's going to play out? Like, for example, with Rose, she's an incredibly spook-prone horse, but I can't go into the lesson with her expecting her to spook, because then she'll be 5-10 times more likely to spook, because I'm going to be nervous, and she's going to be wondering why I'm nervous, and therefore she's going to be looking for reasons to be afraid. So in order to counteract that, even though I'm afraid that she's going to spook and possibly do something dangerous, the best thing I can do really is to just pretend like nothing's going to happen. And but I can't authentically feel in my body like nothing's going to happen unless I really address those fears. So the first thing that I do is I ask myself, okay, so is there anything I'm afraid about right now when I get into the saddle? This could be our trainer's opinion, this could be doing poorly in a round at the show, or this could be, is our horse going to spook? So let's say today I'm going to the saddle and be like, okay, I'm concerned that Rose is going to spook. She's acting timid in the barn, she's kind of jumpy when she was lunging. So what I did was, I just waited until she settled down on the lunge line before I started tacking her up. And 2, I just kind of asked myself, okay, so I know what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid she's going to spook. And then secondly, I asked, okay, what will I do if she spooks, right? And so then I took some safety measures. Obviously I have a helmet on, but in addition to that, I just told myself, okay, I need to be as calm as possible, and I need to tell her that she can do it. And I need to tell myself that we can do this together, because then that will give us both confidence that she doesn't need to be afraid, and I don't need to be afraid. And thirdly, I always play out the worst case scenario and say, okay, if I fall, what's the worst thing that can happen? Yeah, I could get injured, but I'm most likely not going to get hurt with my helmet on. and I'm just going to pay attention to my position. I'm going to be aware of all things that are going on in the arena, but not be afraid. I'm going to have us both focus instead on what we're working on and not what we could be afraid of. And so now I'm set up to be proactive about what we're going to work on, not what we're going to be afraid of. And so that calms me down, because really I've fallen off horses so many times and I've been fine. And I know from experience that that she's not crazy when she spooks, and I've given her no reason to be afraid. All I've done is work with her to make her trust me, and that's what we're going to work on more. And so I'll know not to push her way past her limits, and I'll know to come cool and confident, and I myself will be expecting the best. And if the worst happens, it happens, but it's actually not likely. So we're going to go ahead and start. And as you can see, she is not afraid anymore, in part because I've changed my attitude to not be afraid, and in part because I let her take her time to get relaxed before I even put the saddle on her. And well, it's not a saddle, it's a bareback pad, so don't judge me. I didn't feel like putting the whole saddle on today. So anyway, let's go ahead and start riding. So, in the first several moments of the ride, most of the time I'm really assessing, other than getting my butt balanced in the saddle, is to really focus on how my horse is doing. So Rose has relaxed quite a bit, and so I'm just taking inventory of the fact that she's sensitive. She's a little bit on the slower side today, which is just fine with me, which means we can kind of focus on more mellow stuff and not so much really energetic movements. If she was a little bit more forward, we might work on practicing maybe like trot to canter transitions, or trotting circles, or that sort of thing. But I'm going to use her energy to our advantage, so we're just going to focus a lot on probably walk trot work. Rose is pretty green, and so I just have to be sensitive to the fact that we need to take things at her pace. So I will push her as far as I feel comfortable to. But I think that a lot of times we need to provide our horses rest just as much as we need to like push them, if that makes sense, because we want to be able to push them to the best of their ability with the time that we have, but we don't want to push them past what their minds can handle within a day. And really, rest is a great tool to do that. So after taking inventory of how she's doing, I next will focus on how I'm doing. So I check in with myself again. Am I still carrying around nerves that I had before I got on? And if I am, then I'll check in. I'll remind myself that everything is okay. I know this seems kind of rudimentary, but you know, for those of us who have struggled with being afraid in the saddle, or who have had drastic falls, it's really good to constantly tell ourselves that we're okay, and just really assess what's really going on, not what we're afraid is going to happen. So and then that kind of becomes a pattern in our minds too, that everything's okay, and so our brains will actually end up getting rewired to reminding ourselves that everything's okay, and then we're going to believe it more, and we won't need the reminders as much. So after I check in with myself again, so check in with her, check in with myself emotionally, then I also check my position. So one thing to really do to check your position is not just to go straight to, you know, where are my errors, and, you know, where can I, you know, correct my posture, correct my leg or seat position. Really, the first thing to do is to breathe. And that will not only continue the relaxation, but it will also help me figure out where exactly I might be off. So I just take a deep breath, pet my horse, allow them to feel this relaxed as well. Take another deep breath, and then we go into position. So I always hunch my shoulders forward, so I need to work on that. So then first I focus on sitting back deep into the saddle and not hunching my shoulders forward. So I try to focus on those muscles in the back. So part of what we do in our form in the gym is to check and make sure that we're using our weights correctly, that we're doing our lunges correctly. But when we're working on a certain muscle group when we're riding, sometimes we have to use visualization techniques to make sure that we're sitting in the correct position, which will in turn help our horses interpret what we're doing. So sometimes what helps me when I'm trying to focus on a muscle group to strengthen it is to isolate that muscle group. So for example, right now, if I need to focus on keeping my shoulders back, I don't just put them back, right? That's not going to do it, right? The back is so much, or the shoulders are so much more than just the shoulders. It's all through our back. So I make sure that I'm sitting deep in my seat, which already will pull the rest of my body backwards and keep me more centered. And then I focus on pulling my back muscles together. So my shoulder blades being pulled together feels a lot like doing a lat pull, either with weights or on a machine. So then I focus on those muscles that I know from working out, and I hold those muscles together, and now I take a deep breath and relax into that. And then with that, the next area I know I need to focus on are my heels, right? But now that I'm sitting back farther, it's a little bit easier to pull my feet down into position. So Rose is going to feel this because I'm moving my feet, but I try to reassure her as much as possible that I'm just kind of shifting myself, that I'm not working on her yet. So I get my feet relaxed, keep my heels down a bit, turn my toes out just a hair, and then I'm in position. And something when I focus on when I start moving is, what are my core muscles doing and what are my back muscles doing, right? Because this area, the core and the back, will really drive how the rest of our posture is, how our legs sit in the saddle, and we want to be focused on activating these areas more than we are activating our limbs, if that makes sense. And so I really focus on what are my core muscles doing when Rose walks, and then I breathe into those muscles. So as she walks, I'll breathe, and in my mind, I'm trying to get the air that I'm breathing into those muscles, and I find that it relaxes them. And I'm sure it's psychosomatic, but to me, it really helps me focus on constantly loosening those muscles, and it'll also strengthen them because they'll be working how they're supposed to, and then those muscles will warm up. And same thing with my hips. I try to keep those loose as she walks, and continue to breathe into them like I'm trying to sink them like deeper than her girth, if that makes sense. And so all of these visualization and breathing techniques are a way for you to help set your ride up for success, both mentally and physically, and it'll help your horse really feel what you're asking them, and it'll help you communicate to your horse more precisely. And the beautiful thing is that as you get stronger in the gym, what you're going to notice is that you can isolate different muscles that you couldn't before, or at least not with the same amount of focus or intensity, and that's going to help you communicate more precisely to your horse as well. So thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you in the next video. Bye.